All right, our last day of Unit 6, Lesson 4, graphs of sines and cosine functions. So we've already looked at what happens when you change the amplitude, what happens when you change the period of the graph. The last thing we're going to look at is the uh, translating the graph, moving it up or down. So a couple of uh, pieces of information. Um, First, the graph of sine x is exactly the same as cosine of x minus pi over 2. In other words, if I shifted the cosine function pi over 2 units to the right, I would get the sine function. And we talked about the key points for both sine and cosine, and those are the points that we generally graph. Uh, Cosine is at 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi 0, 3 pi over 2, negative 1, and 2 pi 0. Cosine 0, 1, pi over 2, 0, pi negative 1, 3, 3 pi over 2, 0, and 2 pi 1. All right, so when I'm graphing transformations of trigonometric functions, I would suggest doing it in the following order. Start with the original function, then graph the function with the amplitude change, then graph the function with the period change, and then finally graph the completed function with the translation. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we do the first example. Give you a minute to get this written down. So let's take a look at this in action. So we have y equals negative 4 cosine pi over x minus 2. So I'm going to start with just cosine of x. Let's see, for cosine of x, and if I want to get two periods of that function, And so I'll start with those 5 points that we know for cosine. 0, 1, pi over 2, 0, pi negative 1, 3 pi over 2, 0, and 2 pi is equal to 1. So that graph looks something like that. And then we can do the same thing going backward. Try to do it a little bit better. There we go. So then what I would do is the amplitude change. So I'm going to do y equals negative 4 cosine x in red. So instead of 1, I get negative 4, 0, positive 4, 0, negative 4. And on the other side, that would be 0, positive 4, 0, negative 4. So it would look something like that. And actually, I am going to change these to dashed lines. My next graph is going to then include the period change. So that is going to be y equals negative 4 cosine pi x. For my period for that, I would take 2 pi divided by pi. And so my period is just going to be 2. So uh, pi over 2 is about 1.5. Uh, pi is about 3.14. So somewhere in between those two would be the value for 2. And somewhere over here would be the value for 1. And obviously, in between would be 1.5. It's actually almost where pi over 2 is. And then in between those, we'd have our 0.5. I think my spot for 1 is off a little bit, so I'm just going to move it over a little bit. There we go. Likewise here, we would have negative 1, negative 0.5, negative 1.5, negative 2. So thinking about where my values are, at negative 2, we would be at negative 4. 1.5, 0, negative 1, positive 4, negative 0.5, 0, and negative 4, 0.5, 1, 1.5, and 2. There we go. The last thing I would do then is my entire graph. -4 cosine pi x minus 2, which is going to take every point on my green graph and drop it 2 units. So our graph ends up if I can do a better job here. Looking like that. So again, just taking the time to look at each piece and build from the original function to get to the final product. All right, your homework uh, will be a worksheet for graphing problems using both sine and cosine. So if you need to double check the day 3 notes for sine, you can do that. Or remember, we looked at the 5 kind of special points for the sine function in this unit as well, in this lesson. Have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow.